There are tons of options in the value range right now, so who's it going to be, huh? Motorola's new flagship or the one that started it all? I'm Mark Burstein over Techno Buffalo, and it's time to throw down. This is the OnePlus 2 versus the Moto X Pure Edition. Alright, I'm going to be taking a look at these bad boys in 8 separate categories. We're going to look at the build, the device in the hand, specs and performance, obviously the internals. We're going to look at the other hardware features like fingerprint scanners, front-facing speakers, stuff like that, the screen, the display itself, the camera, the battery, the software, and we're going to call it bang. Because I don't want to just talk about price, we're going to talk about the bang for your buck for each of these devices. This is going to be my model for all of the Versus videos moving forward, so I just wanted to detail that for you really quickly right here. So let's get into it. First up, let's take a look at the build of these two devices. The OnePlus 2 certainly feels a whole lot more premium. It's got a bit of a heft to it that the Moto X lacks. The Moto X hasn't really changed all that much from last year's model, so it's still got the curved back, that dimple around the back as well. But this one lays much flatter on the table, which is really nice, less rocking. Plus, with all the sensors on the front, if it's got a white panel on the front, it just looks a little bit too busy. So overall, I think I gotta give this one to the OnePlus 2. Alright, let's break down the specs and the performance. The OnePlus 2 famously sports the Snapdragon 810, and the performance does show it. You know me, I'm not a benchmark guy. If it can handle what we throw at it in the real world, then we're golden. The OnePlus 2 certainly does hit that mark. While I did experience some lag as in my previous tests, nothing really stood out to me as particularly egregious. The Snapdragon 808 in the Moto X Pure is definitely a workhorse though. It's closer to tried and true than the 810 is, which is why a lot of the devices are going with the 808 as opposed to the 810 that are in the kind of value-minded range options. While the X Pure comes in at just under last year's Nexus 6 on Antutu benchmark, I haven't had any problems with day-to-day use. Between the two of these, I experienced less lag on the Moto X, and turning on GPU rendering on the device definitely backs that anecdotal data up. But despite actually scoring lower than the Moto X, the OnePlus 2 just feels much snappier. On everything from web pages to pulling up my Twitter feed, I just think it's a faster device. I gotta give this one to the OnePlus 2. Let's talk about the other hardware for just a second. Both devices had their fair share of bells and whistles. I really appreciated the OnePlus 2's profile switch on the left side of the device, something that I didn't realize that I was missing a lot from iOS. The off-screen drawing gestures are also certainly convenient, but when it comes to bells and whistles, I think it's really tough to top Moto's excellent gestures that have come in so much handy for me. Everything from waving over the device for active display, to turning on the flashlight with a chop, to finally reliably being able to open the camera with the twist of the device, it all works perfectly, and I'm definitely going to miss them a lot when I move on from the X. With the so-so fingerprint scanner on the OnePlus 2 and no marshmallow support for it, I'd rather have the gestures and the helpful tweaks that Moto packs into the X Pure, so I think I gotta chalk one more up for the Moto X Pure. Alright, let's talk about the display. While the OnePlus 2's display is certainly no slouch, it's hard not to be impressed by the panel in the Moto X. Sure, diminishing returns, but the higher resolution and density of the display does come through in the information density that I am huge on. Being able to see more text, more icons, more all that stuff on the display really makes a difference for me in my day-to-day usage. That's to say nothing of the fact that they packed a Quad HD display into a $400 device with excellent battery life and very few compromises. Even though I tend to prefer the cooler color balance on the OnePlus 2, I did feel the color reproduction was a little bit truer on the photos that I took on the Moto X and just day-to-day stuff in Instagram. The OnePlus 2 also feels like it has sharpening turned up much higher, which you might remember I am not a fan of. So for me, this one's a pretty clear win for the Moto X. Alright, well, what about that camera? Well, the OnePlus 2's camera did a great job in our test shots, but it's not lauded as one of the best ones on the market. The Moto X Pure, on the other hand, has its work cut out for it. Moto hasn't been on their game in terms of cameras, so it's delightful to see that the camera on the X Pure is finally fantastic. Again, it's not the industry leader, but it's a strong offering, and it's certainly much better than anything they've put out to date. Both devices support 4K, slow-mo video, and a host of other features through their respective apps. At first, I thought that Moto's new camera app put it at a really strong disadvantage, but after getting used to it, I kind of like the ability to tap anywhere to trigger the shutter. The comparison shots are pretty close, almost too close to call, I think. Each sensor definitely has their own strong suits. The OnePlus 2 had a much easier time finding focus thanks to the autofocus on the back. That's a laser. That's right, we live in the future. But the Moto X's shots were much more natural and less noisy. You can check out all the shots for yourself in the galleries on the article, but I've got to give this one to the Moto X Pure. Alright, battery time. While the Moto X is short 300 milliamp hours from the OnePlus 2, it had a much easier time making it through days in standby mode and occasional usage. The X hasn't been plugged in well over 2 days when I was writing the script for this, and it made it all the way into the evening with 30% battery left. Granted, this is less than 2 hours screen on time, but it's still impressive. The OnePlus 2, on the other hand, is on the other end of that spectrum. More often than not, I'm concerned about when I'm going to need to plug it in again, and the fact that it uses USB-C, it just exacerbates that issue. I can't hold USB-C against it though, because that's going to be the standard very soon. Either way, the uptime on the OnePlus 2 was just not nearly as good as the Moto X. I have a sneaking suspicion that this has something to do with the 810 under the hood, but obviously I can't confirm that. At the end of the day, the device with more juice wins, and at the end of every day, the Moto X is the device with more juice. On the software front, both devices have thankfully light takes on Android, but Moto has a much lighter touch. Motorola isn't running a total fork of Android like Oxygen OS is, so the changes that Moto makes to the devices these days are largely relegated to apps that you can grab from the Play Store and you can uninstall if you don't want to use them. That means faster updates and performance all the way across the board. So while there isn't anything terribly wrong with Oxygen OS, it still means that it's further from stock, so this one's got to go to Moto. Finally, let's talk about the all-important price tag. I don't want to talk about price in a vacuum like I said, so we're going to call this bang for your buck. The OnePlus 2 comes in at $389 for the 64 gig, 4 gig of RAM model, which is the only one that they currently have in stock now that invites are no longer required for purchase. The Moto X comes in at $499 for a 64 gig storage model. So comparing these two, it seems like OnePlus has the edge, but I'm not convinced that that's true. While it's a huge boon that the device is finally available without an invite, the Moto X has never needed one in the first place, and it comes with the added bonus of being able to make it your own with Moto Maker. For this category, I gotta ask myself which device I would be more likely to buy based on the price, and how long that device would last me. Based on the offerings on each end, this one has got to go to the Moto X Pure. Despite the higher price tag, the customization options and excellent across-the-board performance make me feel way more comfortable that this is the device that's going to ride out a year or two with me as my daily driver, as opposed to the OnePlus 2. Alright, let's tally up that score. Aside from the build and performance, it's a clean sweep for the Moto X Pure. I really think that this is a fantastic device, and the more time I spend with the OnePlus 2, the less I like it. The X Pure has grown on me really quickly, and the last device that I used before it was a Galaxy Note 5, so I think that's really saying something. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is there anything that I missed that you would have liked to have seen me covered in a versus video? I'll definitely make sure that it gets covered in the next one. While you're heading down to the comments, make sure you slap that like button. There's also a subscribe button if you're interested in entering a raffle to win lunch with one of the top crochet artists in the world. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Be kind to one another, and I'll catch you in the next video.